Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of Everyday Truth. We've gone outdoors today, or at least kind of semi-outdoors here on my porch. I want to talk to you about how important time is. Not just time in general, but the time of your own life. Listen in.
Welcome to Everyday Truth with Skelly. We believe the Bible is true and relevant to everyone, everywhere, every day. If today's conversation is a help to you, take a moment to leave a review or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening. Now, let's join Kurt for today's episode.
Hey friends, welcome back. Thought I would bring you out on my back deck today. Such a beautiful night. Virginia is just one of the most gorgeous states in the Union. We're not too far from the Shenandoah Valley. We have it's beautiful. You should come visit us sometime. You can hear the cicadas in the background. Just a quiet kind of perfect porch night. And I wanted to share that with you. We are in 2 Kings chapter 20 in our Bibles today. And we're right in the middle of this amazing prayer that Hezekiah prayed. And I guess I shouldn't really say amazing prayer, because what's amazing about these stories is not the prayer of a feeble human being, it's the power of a gracious God. So remember, God had sent Isaiah to tell Hezekiah, you're going to die. Thus saith the Lord. And remember, Hezekiah turned his face toward the wall. He didn't look for human intervention. He didn't lament in the sense of, God, what are you doing to me? He didn't blame God. In fact, the trial caused him to go toward God. And isn't that what trials ought to do for you and me? The trial ought not to take us from the Lord. It ought to bring us to the Lord. And I think part of that is just knowing that we already have a relationship with the Lord. The fact that God had already answered Hezekiah's prayer about the city, how God had already done some big things in his life, I think that incentivized him to go back to God again. And that's what answered prayer does. Answered prayer gives us the confidence to go back to God again and again. So he does. He prays, he weeps, he asks, and God tells Isaiah on the way out. He's not even home yet. He's still in the whole complex there, the palace complex. And he comes back and lets Hezekiah know, hey, God told me to come back and tell you that you're going to live. Can you only imagine how that must have delighted Hezekiah? Although I have to admit that there's a little bit of doubt in Hezekiah's reception of that word, because it says in verse 5, God told Isaiah, turn again, tell Hezekiah, the captain of my people, thus saith the Lord, the God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will heal thee. On the third day thou shalt go up unto the house of the Lord. So here's a great answer from God. I'm going to heal you, and within 3 days, you're going to be back in the saddle. And he says, and I will add unto thy days 15 years. So not only does God answer the prayer by giving him more life, he gives him quite a bit more life, 15 additional years. Imagine that. Imagine knowing for a fact that I'm going to live 15 more years. That would be a good thing. In some ways, though, that would be a temptation because, hey, I know how much time I have left. I think one of the great incentives we have as modern day believers is we really do not know how much time we're going to have left. We can't boast ourselves of tomorrow. We don't know what a day may bring forth. And of course, Jesus could come back at any moment. So we don't have that same benefit of knowing beyond any shadow of a doubt that I have 15 more years to live. There might be a temptation to procrastinate. There might be a temptation to take that for granted. And what we're going to find in Hezekiah's life is that's exactly what happened. So God says, I have added 15 years, verse number 6, and I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria. So he reiterates that he's going to bring final victory to Jerusalem. I will defend this city for mine own sake and for my servant David's sake. So God reiterates what we learned last chapter, and that is that God is defending his own glory and honoring the covenant promise he made with David. Why? Because God is a God that keeps his word. So, great story, amazing miracle. Wow, what an awesome finish. Or is it a finish? Because what we begin to see now is maybe not the same level of faith that we have seen in Hezekiah. Watch the first clue here in verse 7. Isaiah said, "Take a lump of figs," and they took and laid it on the boil, and he recovered. I find that to be the most non sequitur verse in the chapter. So God just told them, you're going to be healed. And then God said, you're going to have 15 more years, and I'm going to do it for my own honor and glory's sake. And then Isaiah says, okay, put this lump of figs on him. Now, why? If God's going to heal him, why do we not need a lump of figs? Because many times God uses physical means as a way to kind of defibrillate us to trust in the Lord. It's not that God doesn't use physical resources in healing. Of course, he does. He uses doctors sometimes and medicine. But understand that ultimately, death and life come from the Lord. And ultimately, healing and sickness are in God's parlay as well. So here we find that Hezekiah says, now put that lump of figs on him. Now the mistake would be to say, oh, it was the lump of figs that did the trick. No, it wasn't the lump of figs. And we have to be careful because sometimes we look at the lump of figs, the chemotherapy, we look at the lump of figs, the holistic medical approach, or we look at the lump of figs. In many cases in Jesus' public ministry in the New Testament, he used physical means. For instance, he spit on the ground and made some mud and put it in the eyes of that man in John chapter 9. Or he stuck his fingers in the ear of that deaf man. So sometimes there were physical things that Jesus did, but it wasn't those physical things that were an abracadabra. These are just means by which faith can be visualized and conceptualized. So Isaiah said, bring the lump of figs, and he laid it on the boil. He recovered. And Hezekiah said unto Isaiah. Now here's the first clue that Hezekiah's faith is not as strong as we think it is. And Hezekiah said unto Isaiah, what shall be the sign that the Lord will heal me, and that I shall go up into the house of the Lord the third day? Now what a question. Now, God had just said, I'm going to heal you. And Isaiah just put that lump of figs on his boil. And ultimately he did recover. But before that, the recovery took place, Hezekiah says to Isaiah, well, but can you prove it? Can God prove it? Well, first of all, why would you ask that? I mean, God has already said in 3 days, you will go up to the house of God. So all Hezekiah really had to do is wait 3 days and he would know. But he wants to know in that moment. How often is that me? How often is that you? God has told me something that I need to believe that's an answer to prayer, but I don't believe it in the moment because I don't see it quite yet. That's what's happening here. So Hezekiah said, prove it. And the Lord graciously does prove it because it says in verse 9 that Isaiah said, this sign shalt thou have of the Lord, that the Lord will do the thing that he has spoken. Shall the shadow go forward 10 degrees or go back 10 degrees? So the way by which they told time in those days was by a sundial. They didn't have a fancy Apple Watch like me. Or if you've seen my brand new watch that the college gave me at graduation this year, he didn't have a fancy watch like that either. But the point is they could tell time by the sundial. And a degree didn't necessarily mean what you and I think of as the 360 degrees that comprise a circle. but they had different marks on the sundial that would tell people essentially about what time of day it was. So people have tried to extrapolate out, well, 10 degrees would be this amount of time. We don't know that for sure. The whole point is that the way a sundial would work is the shadow would move forward as the sun would change position in the sky, right? And the angle would cause a different angle on that sundial, and you'd be able to approximate the time according to that. So the point is that the sundial typically went in one direction. Why? Because the sun goes in one direction and Earth rotates in one direction. So one direction. So do you want the sundial to go forward? Now that would still be a miracle. Or do you want it to go backward? Well, that would be the opposite way that the sundial would typically travel, or would ever travel. So it says in verse number 10, Hezekiah answered, "It is a light thing for the shadow to go down 10 degrees. Nay, let the shadow return backward 10 degrees. Well, I want to see it do the impossible thing. Now, both of them would have been the impossible thing, but going backward would be that next level of impossibility. And Isaiah the prophet cried unto the Lord, and he brought the shadow 10 degrees backward, by which it had gone down in the dial of Ahaz." Now, did time actually go backward? Did the sun actually change, or the earth stop rotating, or the actual physical universe in some way adjust for this dial to do that? Don't know. The Bible never says. All the Bible says is that the shadow itself went backward. So however God did it is not the issue. The fact is God did do it. God demonstrated his power over time, his power over the physical elements, his power to make time do something different. And that's essentially what he's doing in Hezekiah's life. He's saying, I have the power over the time of life. I have the power to control it. And therefore, I am the God of power, and I am the God of eternality. And God was showing Hezekiah in the little proof, the little sign in the moment that Hezekiah, I am the controller of time. And I think that's the bigger lesson for you and me, that God is the controller of time. He's the controller of the moments of your life. A day with him is as 1,000 years. And what is your life? It's a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. And what we ought to do today, just considering this little miracle, that's a sign miracle of the greater miracle, that he's going to receive 15 more years of life, is the fact that every moment matters. And every moment is in the hands of God. And so let's be more frugal with the way that we spend our time. Let's realize that every fleeting moment is a wasted moment if we're not investing in the Lord. And this ought to be a day when we consider this miracle and then consider the New Testament principle that we ought to redeem the time because the days are evil, to make the most of what God has given us, and perhaps one of the greatest gifts that we have, and that is simply the gift of time. So we'll end there for today, right there in verse number 10, and then we will complete the chapter next episode, and we'll talk about some further lapses of faith in Hezekiah. Hate to say it, but the Bible teaches it. So we'll stop right there. Have a great day in the Lord. God bless you from my porch in Virginia. See you next time.